Welcome back to Untold Revenge Files. Today, the story you're about to hear takes place in Ridgemont, Minnesota. My name is Maren Cole. I'm 31 years old, and I'm about to tell you how my own sister stole my identity, took out a $623,000 mortgage in my name, and then expected me to smile and forgive her like it was nothing. I need you to hear every word of this. I've worked as an intake coordinator at a community health clinic since I was 24. It's not glamorous work. I sit behind a desk, I process paperwork, I help people navigate systems that weren't designed to help them. My salary has never once cracked six figures, and I've never pretended otherwise. I drive a used Honda. I rent a one-bedroom apartment with a window unit that rattles every July. I budget down to the dollar, and I was proud of that, because every single thing I had, I earned. My older sister Tessa was different. Tessa was 2 years ahead of me and a lifetime ahead in terms of what our family gave her. She was the dancer, the homecoming nominee, the one our mother introduced first at every gathering. I was the quiet one. That was my identity in the Cole family. Maren is quiet. Maren is responsible. Maren doesn't need as much attention. And because I never screamed, they assumed I never bled. When Tessa married Derek Calloway, a sales rep with a loud laugh and a louder wardrobe, our parents threw them a rehearsal dinner that cost more than my entire year of rent. I didn't complain. I showed up. I gave a toast. I meant every word of it. That's who I was. The sister who showed up. So when Tessa and Derek announced they'd bought a beautiful 4-bedroom house on Cedarwood Lane, I was happy for them. Genuinely. I remember standing in their new kitchen, running my hand along the granite countertop and thinking, maybe one day I'll have something like this. I didn't know I already did, on paper anyway. It was a Tuesday in March when everything shattered. I was eating lunch at my desk, a container of leftover soup, when my phone rang. The caller ID said Pinecrest Federal Credit Union. I almost didn't answer. I thought it was a scam. Ms. Cole, this is Rachel Dunn from the Mortgage Servicing Department at Pinecrest Federal. I'm calling regarding your account. You're currently 92 days past due on your mortgage obligation. The outstanding balance is $623,000. I put my spoon down. My mouth opened, but nothing came out for a few seconds. I'm sorry, what mortgage? She repeated herself. Calmly, professionally. She gave me the property address. Cedarwood Lane. Before I tell you exactly what I did next, tell me, what time is it where you are right now and where are you watching from? I'm really curious to see how far this story will travel. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely type. I pulled up my credit report on my phone right there at my desk, hunched over, heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my teeth. And what I saw made the room tilt. There was a mortgage for $623,000, a credit card with a $14,000 balance, a home equity line of credit for $45,000, a personal loan for $11,000, all in my name, all opened within the last 14 months. My mailing address had been changed to the house on Cedarwood Lane. My employer was listed as a tech consulting firm I'd never heard of. My annual income was listed at $198,000. I make $51,000. I sat there staring at my phone screen, and the clinic waiting room buzzed with voices on the other side of the wall, and I thought, this can't be real. This is a mistake. Someone made an error. A glitch. A coincidence. But the address wasn't a coincidence. That was Tessa's house. That was the house she'd invited me into. The house where I'd helped her hang curtains. The house where she'd poured me wine and said, "We've finally made it, Maren." She'd said we. My stomach dropped like I'd missed a step on a staircase. I actually stood up from my desk and walked to the bathroom because I thought I was going to be sick. I locked the door and pressed my forehead against the cool tile wall, and I just breathed. In and out. In and out. The way you breathe when the world has just cracked open beneath your feet and you're trying not to fall. I didn't call Tessa that day. I didn't call my parents. Some instinct I didn't fully understand yet told me to be quiet. Not the old kind of quiet, not the Maren doesn't make waves quiet, a different kind. The kind of quiet that gathers evidence. The next morning, I walked into the Pinecrest Federal Branch downtown. I sat across from a loan officer named James Hartley, and I asked to see every document associated with the mortgage. He printed them out, 12 pages, and there it was. My name, my social security number, a signature that looked almost like mine, but wasn't. The letters were too round, too careful, like someone had practiced. I stared at that forged signature, and something inside me locked into place, cold and sharp, like a deadbolt sliding home. I had no idea that the next 72 hours would finally break the silence I'd kept my entire life and change everything. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in the dark with the documents fanned out on the bed beside me like evidence at a crime scene. Because that's exactly what they were. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that signature. Not mine, but close enough to fool a loan officer who wasn't looking hard enough. The next morning, I drove to the Ridgemont Police Department and filed a report for identity theft and fraud. The officer taking my statement paused when I told him the suspected perpetrator was my sister. He looked up from his computer. "Your sister?" he said, like I'd misspoken. I hadn't. I then went to the Federal Trade Commission website and filed a second report. I placed fraud alerts with all 3 credit bureaus. I contacted every institution where accounts had been opened in my name and initiated disputes. I did all of this before noon, moving with a focus that surprised even me. Grief and rage are a strange fuel. They burn clean when you let them. Over the next 2 weeks, I hired a forensic document examiner named Dr. Linda Prescott. She compared the loan signatures to samples of my actual handwriting and to samples of Tessa's. Her conclusion was definitive. The signatures were forged, and the stroke patterns were consistent with Tessa's writing, likely guided by Derek. Digital records from the credit union's IP logs showed that several online account changes, the address update, the income verification uploads, had originated from a device registered to Derek Calloway. I had everything: dates, documents, digital footprints, expert analysis. I had the entire skeleton of what they'd done to me laid out on my kitchen table. And still, a small voice in my head whispered, "Maybe you should just call Tessa first. Give her a chance to explain." That voice sounded exactly like my mother. Because here's the thing you need to understand about the Cole family. We had a pattern, and the pattern went like this. Tessa does something wrong. Everyone sees it. Nobody says it. And if someone does say it, that person becomes the problem. When Tessa crashed our dad's car at 19, I was told not to bring it up because she felt bad enough. When Tessa borrowed $3,000 from our grandmother and never paid it back, I was told it wasn't my business. When Tessa missed my college graduation because she forgot, my mother told me to stop being so sensitive. I was always the one asked to absorb the impact, not this time. I chose a Sunday, family dinner at my parents' house, pot roast, the same dining room table we'd eaten at since childhood. Tessa was there, Derek was there, my parents were there, everyone comfortable, everyone unsuspecting. I waited until dessert. Then I set a manila folder on the table between the coffee cups. "I need to talk about something," I said. My voice was steady, but my hands under the table were gripping my knees so hard my knuckles ached. "What's that, honey?" my mother asked, already smiling, already preparing to redirect. I opened the folder. I laid out the credit report, the forged loan documents, the handwriting analysis, the IP trace report, one by one, like cards in a game I never wanted to play. "Someone opened a $623,000 mortgage in my name," I said, "along with a credit card, a home equity line, and a personal loan. The total debt attached to my identity is over $690,000. The mortgage is for this address." I looked at Tessa. "Your house." The silence was so thick I could hear the kitchen clock ticking from 2 rooms away. Tessa's face went white. Derek looked at his plate. My father picked up the credit report and read it slowly, his jaw tightening with every line. "Tessa," he said quietly, "tell me this isn't what it looks like." And she broke. Not with remorse, with excuses. "It was supposed to be temporary. We were going to refinance. Derek's commission was supposed to come through. We were going to pay it all off and switch everything over. You wouldn't have even known." "I wouldn't have even known," I repeated. The words tasted like ash. "We needed the house, Maren. You don't understand the pressure. Derek's clients expect a certain image. We couldn't get approved on our own. Your credit was perfect. It was supposed to be a bridge." "A bridge," I said. "You forged my signature. You fabricated my income. You stole my identity." "That's not a bridge, Tessa. That's a crime." My mother reached across the table. "Maren, can we talk about this privately, as a family? There has to be a way to fix this without—" "Without what, Mom? Without consequences? Have you ever looked across a table at people who are supposed to love you and realized they're not worried about what happened to you? They're worried about what you might do about it? That's where I was, right there, at that table." My father stood up. He pointed at Tessa and Derek. "Get out of my house." His voice cracked. "Both of you. Now." They left. My mother cried. I gathered my folder. My friend and coworker, Jolene Watts, had told me 2 days before, "You already know your answer, Maren. Would you accept this from a stranger? Then why would you accept it from someone who's supposed to love you more?" She was right. I was done being the quiet one. The next morning, I woke up hollow but clear. For the first time in my life, I wasn't managing someone else's crisis. I was protecting myself. I was done absorbing. It was time to rebuild. Weeks passed, then months, and the world didn't end, even though some days it felt like it might. I cooperated fully with the county prosecutor's office. A federal case was opened because the fraud involved federally insured financial instruments. An assistant U.S. attorney named Catherine Moreau handled the case. She was thorough, calm, and unflinching, everything I was trying to be. The investigation confirmed everything I'd gathered on my own and more. Derek had created a fake employment verification letter using letterhead from a company that didn't exist. Tessa had provided my Social Security number, which she'd memorized years ago from a tax document our mother had carelessly left on the kitchen counter. Together, they had built a paper version of me, a Maren Cole who earned nearly $200,000 a year, who wanted a 4-bedroom house on a tree-lined street, who signed loan documents in letters that were just a little too round. During this time, my mother called constantly, not to ask how I was doing, not to ask if my credit had been repaired. She called to plead, "Maren, please, think about her children. Think about what this will do to the family." "What family, Mom? The one that forged my name?" "She made a mistake." "A mistake is forgetting a birthday. This is federal fraud." "You're going to destroy her." I paused. I let the silence sit. Then I said, "She destroyed me first. She just did it quietly." My mother stopped calling after that. For a while, at least. Jolene became my anchor. She drove me to my attorney's office. She sat with me while I reviewed credit dispute responses. She brought me Thai food on the nights I couldn't bring myself to cook. She never told me what to do. She just kept showing up. That's what real family looks like. It looks like someone handing you a plate of pad CUW and saying, "You're going to be okay, and I'm going to be right here until you believe it." I started seeing a therapist named Dr. Adisa Franklin. It was the first time I'd ever talked to a professional about growing up in a home where my role was to be invisible. She helped me see that the identity theft wasn't an isolated event. It was the logical extreme of a lifetime of being treated like I didn't have boundaries worth respecting. Tessa didn't steal my name because she thought I wouldn't notice. She stole it because she believed I wouldn't fight back. I also started doing something I'd never had the emotional bandwidth for before. I focused on myself. I enrolled in a financial literacy course through the community college. I started a savings plan, even though my credit was still in ruins. I walked 3 miles every morning before work, rain or shine, because moving my body forward felt like practice for moving my life forward. Now, before I continue, I want to ask you something. Have you ever been the person in your family who everyone expects to just take it? The one who's supposed to forgive first, complain last, and never make anyone uncomfortable? If that's you, drop a comment below. I see you. I was you. 6 months after the Sunday dinner confrontation, Tessa and Derek were formally indicted on charges of bank fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. The evidence was overwhelming. Their attorney advised them to negotiate. They both entered guilty pleas. Derek was sentenced to 26 months in federal prison. Tessa received 18 months. The house on Cedarwood Lane was seized as part of the restitution order. Their assets were frozen and liquidated to begin repaying the financial institutions. And, eventually, me. I found out about the sentencing through Catherine Moreau's office. I didn't attend the hearing. I didn't need to watch. Knowing that the system had looked at what was done to me and called it what it was, a crime, was enough. I didn't need to see Tessa's face when the judge spoke. The family fallout was slow and ugly. Word traveled through cousins, aunts, old family friends. Some people reached out to me with support. Others treated me like I'd dropped a grenade into the family portrait. My Uncle Roger told me I should have handled it privately. My cousin Beth told him to mind his own business. Lines were drawn. Alliances shifted. The family I thought I knew rearranged itself into something I barely recognized. But here's what surprised me most. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt something quieter. I felt free. Knowing Tessa was facing real consequences should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like balance, like a scale that had been tipped my entire life had finally, slowly leveled. And I wondered, was this what justice actually felt like? Not fireworks, not satisfaction, just the absence of a weight I'd been carrying so long I'd forgotten it was there. 9 months after the phone call from Pinecrest Federal Credit Union, I sat at a closing table in Lakefield, Minnesota, and signed my name, my real signature, on the mortgage documents for a 2-bedroom bungalow with a small backyard and a kitchen window that faces east. The loan officer handed me the pen and said, "Congratulations, Ms. Cole." I stared at the signature line for a moment longer than I needed to. Because the last time my name had appeared on a mortgage, I hadn't been the one holding the pen. This time, every letter was mine. Every dollar was documented. Every number was real. I cried in the car afterward. Not sad tears, just full ones. The kind that come when something you built with your bare hands finally stands up on its own. My credit score, which had cratered to the low 400s at the peak of the fraud, had climbed back to 680. Not perfect, still healing, but functional. Like me. Life in Lakefield was quiet in the best way. I kept my job at the clinic. I repainted the living room a soft gray blue that Jolene said looked like calm. I adopted a cat from the county shelter, an orange tabby named Otis who liked to sleep on the heating vent and judge me from across the room. For the first time in my adult life, I had a space that was entirely mine, earned entirely by me, protected entirely by me. My mother reached out 4 months after the sentencing, a voicemail, not a call. Her voice was thin and tired. "Maren, I know you're angry. I know you think I chose Tessa over you. Maybe I did. I don't know. I'm her mother too, and I didn't know how to hold both of you at the same time. I'm not calling to ask you to forgive her. I'm calling because I miss you, and I'm sorry I made you feel like you had to fight alone." I listened to that voicemail 3 times. The first time, I felt nothing. The second time, I felt everything. The third time, I felt something close to grace. Not for what she'd done, but for the fact that she'd finally said it out loud. I didn't call her back that day. I wasn't ready, but I saved the message. A few weeks later, I received a letter. Not from Tessa. Not from my mother. From Tessa's 11-year-old daughter, my niece Lily. It was written on lined notebook paper in purple ink, the kind of letter only a child can write. Honest, without trying to be. "Dear Aunt Maren, Mom told me she did something really bad to you, and that's why she's away. I don't really understand all of it, but I know it hurt you. I just wanted to say I still love you, and I hope you still love me too. I drew you a picture of a house because Mom said you got your own house, and I think that's really cool. Love, Lily." The drawing was a yellow house with a red door and a sun with a smiley face. I put it on my refrigerator, and I sat on the kitchen floor and I cried again because betrayal doesn't happen in a vacuum. It sends cracks through every relationship it touches, including the innocent ones. I wrote Lily back. I told her I loved her. I told her she hadn't done anything wrong. I told her that sometimes adults make choices that hurt other adults, and it's never the kid's fault. I told her the house was beautiful and that she was welcome to visit someday when the time was right. I did not mention Tessa. Some boundaries are invisible but absolute. Tessa herself wrote to me once from the facility in Waseka. The letter was 2 pages long. She talked about a program she was in, about therapy, about accountability. She said she was sorry. She said she understood if I never wanted to speak to her again. She did not ask for forgiveness. She did not ask for anything. I read it, I sat with it, and I decided that I believed she meant it, and that it still didn't change anything. Not yet. Maybe not ever. And that was okay. Because here's what I've learned, and I want you to hear this clearly. Love and access are not the same thing. I can love my sister from a distance. I can wish her well and still refuse to hand her the keys to my life again. Forgiveness, if it ever comes, doesn't require reunion. It doesn't require pretending. It doesn't require me to shrink myself back into the quiet girl who never made waves so that everyone else could sail smoothly. I am not that girl anymore. My name is Maren Cole. I am 32 years old. I live in a house I earned. I have a job that matters. I have a friend who shows up with takeout and honesty. I have a cat who tolerates me. I have a credit score that's climbing. I have a therapist who reminds me that setting boundaries isn't cruelty. It's clarity. And I have peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from everything being perfect. The kind that comes from knowing exactly who you are and refusing to let anyone, not even the people who share your blood, rewrite your story without your permission. So after everything you've heard, if you were standing where I am now, with the sister who stole your name asking you to open the door again, would you let her back in and call it forgiveness, or would you protect what you've built and call it self-respect? I already know my answer. I hope you know yours. And that's where Maren's story ends, not with revenge, not with bitterness, but with a 2-bedroom bungalow, a rescued cat named Otis, and a signature that finally belongs to her. $623,000. That's what her own sister stole. Not from a stranger, not from a bank, from the one person in the family who never asked for anything, the quiet one, the reliable one, the one they all assumed would just absorb it. But Maren didn't absorb it. She documented it. She reported it. She stood at that family dinner table with a folder full of truth and said, "No more." And that's the thing about quiet people. When they finally speak, everybody listens. Tessa and Derek are serving federal time. The house on Cedarwood Lane is gone. The forged signatures, the fake income, the stolen identity, all of it caught up with them. Not because Maren wanted revenge, but because she wanted her name back. Now let me ask you one more time. If your own sibling, someone who grew up in the same house, ate at the same table, shared the same blood, took out $623,000 in your name, and your parents told you to stay quiet, would you stay quiet, or would you do exactly what Maren did? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. If this story hit you, if it made you feel something, smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that bell so you never miss another story. Because every week on Untold Revenge Files, we bring you stories about people who were pushed too far and pushed back. I'll see you in the next one.